everybody, to this week's episode of Linking the Blocks. Again, big thank you for the ever-growing attendance. It's really amazing. Today, only 1 week in between episodes, because we had a bit of shift of schedule. We talked about it last week, but we'll be up to the normal schedule of every 2 weeks after this. Yeah, welcome. This is the newest episode of Linking the Blocks, the ChainsAtlas podcast. My name is Jan, and today we are welcoming Peter Justin from BeBop in Singapore. Man, how are you? You should be able to unmute.
All right, one more time with feeling. Can you hear me?
There we go. Yes, we do.
Yes,
At least I do,
fantastic.
and I assume everybody does.
Well, yeah, thank you for having me on. And yes, all good on my end. Finally getting here, so happy to have a chance to speak and a welcome to everybody who is taking some time out. Peter of Bebop. I'm actually sitting in Sydney right now. We have two locations. So my partner Daniel, who's on the chat here, he's in Singapore. I'm sitting in Sydney. So it's 5 p.m. Sydney time right now.
Awesome. Now, I was about to ask how Singapore is. I have to add a caveat here. Usually, the guests I welcome here, I have some interaction before. We only were in a few calls at the same time, but we didn't really talk individually. So I'm looking forward to also get your story, to know your story a little bit better. Um, we've mainly been working with Dan, your partner in Singapore. So how is Sydney then?
Sydney's cold. Well, cold for
How's
me.
your winter,
I'm
right?
It's winter now. It's not that bad. I know I might be whinging a little bit. It's probably about, I think, 12, 13 degrees right now. Gets a bit colder as days pass. But yeah, winter is a bit annoying, with the sun going down at, like, 4:30. So now it looks like, my day is done at 5 p.m. I just
I
feel
grew
like,
up in
man, this
Frankfurt. I know what you're talking about. It's depressing.
Ex- yeah, it's depressing. I feel like I don't have enough time in a day. It's time's up. And well, they are positive parts of it. So at least it's not hot. So
Tell me
Singapore,
about
where
them. I never figured them out.
so this that. So yeah, if you're in Frankfurt, you understand the winter, and you guys have
Yeah,
real winter, real snow. So here we're
yeah,
just
yeah.
yeah, dabbling
Occasionally,
in it.
yeah. It's like if you go to Scandinavia, that's where it really hits you.
Mm, mhm.
When I worked with Volkswagen, must be about 13 years ago by now. God, time flies. Um, I had to do a trip through Scandinavia, Sweden and Norway, and that was in January. So we had like 3 hours of
Oh,
sunshine, and that wasn't really sunshine. That was like the sun peaks up a little bit, it's high, and
yeah,
then leaves.
yeah.
Uh, Probably also too cold for. So it's really yeah. Even though I have Scandinavian genes, like my name is Swedish, but I can't
Mhm.
stand the cold. I can't stand the winter. So I'm quite happy in Southeast Asia, to be honest.
Yeah.
Yeah, cool. Thanks a lot. So you already alluded to a little bit. You are in marketing PR. You run an agency in Singapore, and you guys are an interesting mix out of a lot of experience that I would like you to elaborate a little bit about your background and how you got to this point.
Yeah,
But you
sure.
also do a lot of Web 2, you do a lot of Web 3, do a lot of more traditional media. So I'd love to hear how you got to this point, running an
Mhm.
agency between Sydney and Singapore. And yeah, what what is it
Yeah.
that you love about what you do?
Sure. Well, yeah, BeBop as an agency was started in 2013, so we're a 12-year-old agency. We spent quite a lot of time in our work that focuses around digital marketing, lead generation, public relations. We focus most specifically in the tech space, so that's where the intersect between Web2 and Web3 goes. We kind of been working with startups, scale ups, now working with some multinational companies as well. So we've gone from basically from the ideation stage, worked through entrepreneurs all the way through seed funding, Series B, Series D. Even some of the clients that we worked through have gotten through with them to the IPO stage. We've been doing mostly of our work around Asia Pacific. So around Southeast Asia, up to North Asia, and now we're working with some interesting companies based out of Australia, New Zealand. And I think in our time, we've been lucky enough to work with businesses that have raised like a cumulative of about 100 million US dollars. We've done campaigns for Revolut, Payoneer, Wantedly, and kind of like currently we are about in our extended team. We're about 10 of us. We are all spread across Southeast Asia and Australia. But the main guys would be me and Daniel, who's on this call. And that's kind of it. We've been doing our best. And I think what I wanted to kind of share is what I've shared with Samti and the team is that what my main concept here is called instant credibility. What is exciting for me is that we want to find great stories, great companies with ideas that they want to share with their region, with their users, with the world, and we want to find ways to build that credibility so that you can get to the next step, get to the higher, hit the higher notes of marketing, and hit the ground running. So that's kind of like what we do here at BeBop.
Awesome. Brings me to the question, what's credibility to you? If I'm
Yeah.
a really degen Web3 protocol, um, and I come to you,
Hmm.
how do you create credibility for me? That's probably one extreme case, but
Hmm.
um,
A bit extreme, but yes, that's
give
that's
it a
that's
give it a
true.
shot.
Yeah, so maybe I'll start the other way around. Like, why do you need credibility? I think just some stats to start with is that it's about getting increased engagement. This is some of these things you guys might be familiar with, but I'm just gonna throw some numbers at you guys. So 92% of people read online reviews. I think that's probably lower than what I think it would be. But yes, 92% of consumers of people who buy anything will read online reviews. 83% of buyers value recommendations of people they know. And 66% of people buy things based on opinions of other people that they don't know. So credibility is inherently important in anything you do, be it in a degen world or be it in a Web2 more traditional setting. It is what will allow you to come across. I think it's a great example you put out, like something that is very left field for maybe like people in the traditional world, but for a degen play, your first concern is whether this is a scam, whether or not this will will
Most
you get
likely,
rugged.
most
Yeah,
likely it is.
most most likely yes, but like why would you choose one degen project versus the other one? Then the question is maybe more people seems to be in it. Like maybe on one hand it's like you have that feel that they have more recommendations or the more people kind of like talk good about them. Isn't it doesn't solve the fundamental issue about what they're doing. The fundamentals are still like suspect, but whether or not you believe you want to get involved is that crowd herd mentality, that credibility about whether or not you think everybody else is buying into it. Will you be FOMOing it, or will you kind of feel like you're missing out? So I would say that's definitely why you will need such kind of like that goals to
Yeah.
convince someone else that you are worth their time, and of course worth like plunging money into their project for however long or however short. So I believe like that's really kind of like key. And the other kind of like follow-on question is perhaps like, how? And this I can't kind of like, say for everybody, but the point is that this work that we are doing in terms of marketing, in terms of like, public relations, is trying to get a consensus of what your project would mean and why it should succeed versus somebody else. And in the other way you think of it is, at any point in time, there are hundreds, if not thousands, of projects. They're all vying for your attention. Everybody on TG would know you get hundreds of DMs and come on, bro, you can do it, man. This will make you rich. Which one of those would you actually click? Which one of those would you actually engage with? Is likely that you heard somebody else talk about something, you saw it here on maybe Coin Telegraph, or maybe you find something else out in another chat that, oh, everybody's talking about this, then you feel you're interested, then you get dive into it. So I would say, kind of like, sum up what all we're getting at is, the credibility is a important way for you to get someone to believe in you, and how that is that's the rub. That is another question that must be more specifically dived into.
So let's look at it from the other perspective. What mistakes do a lot of Web3 protocols do to not have the right credibility, even though they have a solid product?
Mm-hmm.
Uh, so what mistakes? You see a lot of projects. So
Yeah.
what do you feel is a common thing that you see all the time where you just, damn, not again? So the low-hanging fruit, so to speak, when you engage with a company to
Yeah.
increase the credibility.
I think what I would say that the way that you phrased it is a very good one, because what usual, like, and you maybe would say what people do right. I think that one, there are many things you can do right, but what you do wrong, the number one, I think in
Yeah, you
my
always learn from the bad stuff, right? You always learn from mistakes much more than from.
exactly.
If something went well, the learnings are. I mean, it's a good feeling, but the learnings. That's
Yeah.
my experience as an entrepreneur. Are usually
Yeah.
minuscule.
It's like the fuck up series, right? They like
Exactly.
basically
Yeah.
yeah, you go and you learn how someone did things
Yeah.
wrong, and that
Super
you have
valuable.
more to learn from
Yeah.
them. Yeah, yeah, so valuable.
Yeah.
So
Exactly.
if I have to say something in that is, a lot of projects we deal with, they decide that, like, they are not going to engage with the Web2 world. I think that's one of the biggest mistakes we've seen. Is in, of course, the caveat here is, everything I'm saying, as the Japanese would say, right? Like, when you're a hammer, everything looks like a nail. So from our point of view is, oh, that's what we always talk about, because that's what we see. Because what we see is that a lot of Web3 projects kind of feel like, oh, we can just stick it out. We can, like, work very much in our, like, TG, like, chats. We can stick to just our usual, like, this kind of groups where we are they are usually, oh, I only want to convince like-minded people and have enough of them, my project will succeed. But the reality, what we have seen is, because the project is not widely accepted, or at least beyond the confines of the groups, they kind of like, you get in a very group of a group think type of like situation, where everybody's like, yeah, yeah, GM, oh, we're gonna hype up, we're gonna be great, we'll be awesome. But I feel like, sometimes the projects don't see that there is a wider world of that adoption they need to get to, because that's how you actually get beyond where your current group is. So I feel I might be, as I said, I'm pumping my own kind of like, I'm selling the Kool-Aid, but I feel if that your project starts off, you need to have a clear roadmap towards where you want to be, and of course start where you're comfortable with, but you have to break out of that discomfort, and you have to find other people outside your world that was willing to engage, and that's how you can actually kind of like, raise the amount of funds that you need, get the right audience that you have, or beyond the current audience you have, to kind of get to that. So that's how we've seen some of the Web3 projects kind of get out there. So I feel like, I need to stress that doesn't mean that if you don't do that, you will fail. But in my experience and what we have seen is that you need to have you need to convince the non-believers, so to say.
Yeah, I would say that I probably can concur with that from what I've seen. There's obviously differences in what you're doing, right? In regards to what you're doing, if you, like us, we are an infrastructure protocol. So a lot of aspects
Hmm.
that we do are not relevant to Web 2 because it's about you running nodes, you're helping and securing the network. But in the end, what we want to do is being an infrastructure on which people build solutions that are very relevant for Web 2. And I really believe that Web 3 can only succeed if what it creates in terms of value eventually has an impact for somebody that has no idea about crypto, that has no idea about how blockchains work. Frankly, a lot of people in crypto don't know how blockchains work, but that's a pet peeve of mine. It's a totally different story. I mean, not get down that the tangent. Um, but yeah, so for us, it's a very interesting balance to strike, where we see a lot of the projects we partner with. They're very relevant for Web 2 audience. That might be even more relevant for them than for a lot of the DGen Web 3
Mm,
groups that we talk to, because their use case is very much traditional, but they make use of crypto and of blockchain to do things better. And like, for example, just partnered with a very early stage project that does ride hailing on a Web3 way, getting rid of the big um, commissions you pay to the Ubers and Grabs of the world. Um, and for them, obviously, like while they might initially market to a Web3 audience in the sense that, okay, these are people that we might get as early adopters. We just had a conversation yesterday. I don't think on a driver's side, for example, that's a driver at all. So you need to appeal to a more traditional audience to be
mm,
successful. And even as a blockchain, eventually we want to have awareness, just like a cloud service would want to have awareness from a audience that's not super deep tech. But obviously our focus is a little bit different. So we need more people that understand the tech, that understand how blockchain works, that understand crypto to make the whole system work as a blockchain. Talking about node runners, talking about people that interact with the token and understand how to build on a blockchain, right? Even though we make it a lot easier with our AI integration. But yeah, how do you work with different projects, like let's say a DeFi project compared to a more real world application that uses a Web 2.5 application that uses blockchain for certain
mm.
aspects? Do you see a difference in, or like really a deep infrastructure project like ours? Do you really see differences in how you would approach it and how to build credibility around these different angles?
Yeah, so I think like what you kind of mentioned like just now was a great point that I don't get it is that people kind of not everybody is meant to understand technology. Some people are have to, like for your project or ChainAtlas, you have to understand crypto to be able to work in it, and there are others that do not. So in my time, I've worked for a startup which now is defunct called Emanate. So this was around the COVID era, and the genesis of which was to um, kind of be the blockchain Spotify. So instead of paying for subscription, you would like stake X amount of tokens, and then that will allow you to have access to music that's more underground, that's focused around dance music, hip hop, and we had a lot of other events and NFTs and the like. But what we realized at very early was that we were trying our best to try to convince everybody that blockchain is better. You get paid instantly, like what you have will be worth more with time to come. The typical things of trying to convince people, and they're like what I mentioned. People who are into this scene, they're like, oh, I've been waiting for this project. I've been waiting to do this forever. And most people here are like, you lost me at blockchain, bro. And we had that we struggled at the early stage trying to get people to understand why this is better. When then we realize, and this is something that I think a lot of people would realize, you don't do something because it's 10% better. You only change your behavior when you do something that's 90% better. It has to be seamless. The end user would be it on like many fronts, B2C or B2B, they don't really
That's like
want to
the
know.
10x effect you get, like
Yeah,
in a classic
yeah,
Silicon Valley approach. You have to
yeah,
be
yeah.
10 times better than the
That's a
competition,
better.
otherwise nobody cares.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and the technology behind it, they don't they if it works, great. It's powered by blockchain, sure, no problem. And I think we have come a long way since then, where you need to kind of convince people that blockchain is a legitimate technology. Crypto is not all scams. There's a ton of them, yes, still plenty, but not all of them are, and that there's a very inherent group of great projects that they are coming up. They are real projects that people should be aware of. So I would say, if anything, it is that people need to know that, or at least people who are running like different coins and different projects, that you will have to have a deep dive like aspect of what you're doing in marketing for those who want to understand or for those who want to learn. But for most people, they just want to know it works. So back to the question, I know I kind of digressed a little bit. So the difference between, let's say, working with a, let's say, Web 2.5 is we would kind of the messaging needs to be around simplicity. And because we at that point, we're trying to bridge that chasm between Web3 users and Web2. We would actually try to say that if there's a chance for us not to use the keywords that here, that using crypto, blockchain, Web3, don't. It's not necessary to get there. Just know it works. People want to dive deeper, they can go in. Here's some white papers you can read. Here are some extra details you want to. But for most people, it's just technology. They don't need to know the difference between where you're at. Whereas, let's say a more DeFi kind of even in like the degen, your audience is already different, right? So your message doesn't need to as exactly cater to a unknown, or somebody who is trying to learn beyond where they need to. Sorry, they already kind of want that depth. So maybe the focus, I would say that with those projects, lean into it, right? Maybe you're not at that stage where you need to deal with like what we say Web 2, a more mainstream audience. Then be the best you can be. Work on the content. I think that is where we will usually kind of dive in. We want to ensure that you have the right pillars that of support. So be it having the right advisors, investors, and then those kind of things. Continue building that credibility. And then last is numbers. How many people do you have in this product? All these kind of things, Jay-Z said, right? Men lie, women lie, numbers don't. So to have that credibility at your early stage at a product that you need to understand your audience, get the crowd swell, however way you can, and in different worlds in different scenarios we can kind of dive deeper into it. But I think as an overall broad stroke, we would have different messages for different audiences, as well as if your audience is a specific niche type, then focus on that, get good at it, understand it. So my take would be, yeah, using that kind of lens to investigate and to understand, to find that value that we can help with our clients that are in various different
Yeah.
industries and different roles.
That is a super interesting topic because obviously we have to, or we have been looking at that a lot lately. And it brings me to the one question and the one dilemma that I've not seen solved anywhere really is what you just described. You have different messages for different audiences, right? Like, let's say you're a protocol that has, I mean, in the end, it boils down to, in my opinion, once in the days when cloud was new, nobody
Mhm.
would buy a software because it's cloud, right?
Yeah,
They would just see easier access. They would see it's a subscription model. It's so much easier than downloading something, having to install it, having to update it all the time, and Um, so that's how things came on it, but nobody knew what cloud is. I mean, you heard the word, but it's just as vague and weird and technical and nerdy like blockchain is still to most people. So people would just buy good software. Um, Back then, though, you didn't have the other side of the equation of people that drive to your product just because it's cloud, but you have people
Mm,
that you drive to your product just because it's blockchain. So now, if you have these two distinct ways of communicating, and I've not seen a company that does it really great, but the problem I always see is that they are so detrimentally opposite in terms of how they do things that oftentimes you alienate one crew
mm,
by the stuff you say to the other. And you cannot really say, I mean, you have open public channels and all, you cannot really completely separate things. You saw that a lot with these Web3 games, right? Where they try to appeal to the gaming audience and the gaming community. On the other hand, you have the Web3 folks, um, and they really didn't gel. And that was like one of the examples how not to do it. I strongly believe, not that I would know how to do it perfectly. We are, I think, having a solid approach, but I think nobody completely solved it. And then the last thing, and this gets us to the other aspect of this call, right? AI. That's yet
yep,
another very technical community that's also
mm,
very interesting and important for us to capture. But yet again, a different language, different goals, different perspective on things that is often not okay with what you would say to a Web3 person, right? And
mm.
it's I'd love to hear your take on that and how you would see ways to solve it. I don't expect the golden shot, don't worry, but if you have some ideas, I'd love to hear them.
I wish I have that like silver bullet that solves and cures everything. But yeah, you kind of like put that like really in focus here is that you are kind of there is no easy way to address every single audience, but it's kind of by definition is that they are supposed to be diverse and segmented. So in kind of like a lot of the work that we do as in sometimes and this one, if anybody has worked with clients would know, we've asked our clients like who is your audience, and the answer is everyone. Then I kind of die a little bit. I'm like, oh my gosh, this guy. There's no such thing. There's like you have a product that's for everyone. You have to be clear in where you're at. And so if you're a like project that is um, Web3 AI like simultaneously, you kind of have to in a way choose based on like where you can, how you want to present yourself, as in you kind of can't be everything to everyone. I think it's abundantly clear. So I think I'm trying to, if I have to say like my punt, like I can't say I'm definitely right, but like we talked about like you talked about cloud. I want to touch on that because early on in my career, when I first started in tech, I was at a company called Drop My Site, which backed up websites in the cloud, which this was circa 2012, around that time. So that concept of cloud was entirely not unknown, but people were kind of like saying, no, no, this is not where you want to be. AWS was just kind of like, just getting started around that time as well, especially in APAC. So we came out. So what we did then, so how we kind of like did our bit was we were marketing to the developer community, to like people who would need to back up their websites more as a secure storage like option. So we managed to do a lot of so one of the things we did, which is something for anybody to consider, is that we were very targeted at a very early stage to the kind of like early adopters, the those who are most likely to take on this project. And so we did went to a lot of forums, we went to a lot of like seminars, we did a lot of conventions where we met up with like developers, coders, and as well as major corporations. So we try to convince them that yeah, you should archive your website, you should back them up, because everybody goes down and then you want to know that you're safe. So we were doing that kind of like very consistently. But at the same point, we realized that there's a very small niche audience that nobody we can't survive on that. We grew really quickly, went from zero to about 520 something thousand paying users in the span of about 6 months. So we were able to really like, hone in on that message. But now the question is, how do we get the next step? So we actually had a separate product we launched, which was drop my email. So there was a email backup, which, everybody has an email. Every corporation out there needs to back up their stuff for compliance, for legality issues. Then we also launched Drop My Mobile, which at that point was slightly before your backups were more convenient via Apple or any of the Androids. So we did a couple of different product lines, and we went very clearly to the different groups that we kind of got in to kind of like market our product. So kind of a roundabout way of saying that you need to understand what you have, who you have, and then perhaps be very segmented where possible, because we have different product lines. So we could discuss or push messaging that was different, because it was not specifically the people who need to back up emails are not likely to have to back up their websites. Perhaps that's what our goal was. So that business eventually got well invested, the IPO, and then it was recently kind of like like sold again. So I feel like we did something correct, and that's where I would say is that you have to not I'm saying that people will want to, if possible, find a very specific message with the audience. If you have multiple ones, then try to find different ways to break that up. So even if as a company as a whole, you can have different audiences, just that the product lines can be kind of split. I think that's how I've seen it done, and still trying to figure out for how everybody else could do so. Have not yet been able to replicate that magic since then, but maybe you guys might have something better. We can all try to chip in with some answers on how we can find that solution.
Let's have an intense discussion about that soon. I'm pondering that question a lot. I mean, I think we're doing a solid job, but there is definitely room to improvement, especially now that we get closer to actual products on AI front that people can use. So we just released our new IDE, which enables you in developer interface for smart contracts. So you can basically use AI to write code, also one of those new amazing um, words. So basically use AI to code
Mm,
with prompting. You can create quite complex smart contracts. I had it created decks for me, basically, the smart contracts for decks. Um, and that was done in seconds. So that's the amazing part that AI can do. But then that's still a very Web3 community of Web3 developers that you would talk to, but you also hope to get a new developers and maybe people that are not strictly developers that have a bit of tech background.
mm,
But then soon there will be complete no-code interface to create AI agents on our chain. And that will tailor towards pretty much anyone that wants an AI agent, truly own it. Um, Maybe initially it will be mainly people that do some investment in crypto that have some relationship to blockchain, but eventually it's something that would be appealing to an AI community. They can run their own node and have the model basically run locally, but validated through different nodes on a blockchain. People can really run their own models without having to put them in their own basement because they're on a blockchain, they're decentralized. Um, and they're still really in full ownership and they're trustless. There's no third party you need to trust like OpenAI, which obviously does a very good job. But then oftentimes they do changes because they have billions of users and they cannot go out and make sure everybody is aware of it. And that's the good old cloud model again, right? When I worked with
yeah.
a big company a while ago, they relied completely on Google Workspace, and they had this data-driven project where they used something called BigQuery, big database that Google provides, and suddenly it didn't work anymore, and that was because of a slight, tiny little change in the API in the connection to that database that Google rolled out it was somewhere, but it was not obvious enough that the team caught it in time. So suddenly the application didn't work anymore. So you're still relying on a third party. So there is definitely a story that would be appealing to all these groups,
Yeah.
but to bring them together and not alienating each other, that's actually a tough job. And we've seen that, as I said earlier, the prime example is gaming, where this went
Mm,
really bad. Where to this days the gaming community wouldn't touch even if it looks amazing, even if it's a great game, wouldn't
mm,
touch it just because there is one NFT somewhere in it, right? Um, I'm sure that will change over time, but it's been something. It's been a situation that was created, um, but that would justify a whole different session to talk about how that happened. So I don't want to go into this, and probably want to invite Luke, our head of community, to it because he lived it. He lived through those times. But cool. Let's let's agree it's work in progress, and nobody has found the ideal solution for it. And let's see that we are the first. Another thing that I'd like to talk about is Web3 is very much about community, right? Because you need a community to support your chain, you need a community to support your project, to support your token. Um, Given your approach that is also more influenced by Web2 approach, where these things, sure, community is important, but not to the same degree. It's not the end all of things, as it can be in Web3 sometimes. It can end your project, even though you have good sales because the token just tanks. Um, how do you, from a PR angle, would see this, and how would you, yeah, how would you deal with this also in conjunction with investments to be made into the project? It leads again a bit to the Web3, Web2 community and communication thing, but
mm.
like the whole community building as a big part of Web3, how as a PR agency you look at that and how you work around that.
Okay. Um, I think at this point maybe it'll be kind of like prudent for me to kind of mention why we still have a value here as a well, we would say more of a from a public relations angle, because I know that many people, and then maybe those who are listening around say like, we don't need Web2. We just need to stick to what like what we have on Web3. We don't need all these other external like forces. We just build our community. I think that's kind of like a start. But the reason why we still kind of have a role to play in this marketplace is because back to the idea of credibility is with so many projects, with so much noise out there, you wouldn't know what to do, where to go, where to start. If let's say you were trying to get into the Web3 world, how would you know what is going to be, well, a pump and dump, what is going to be like, a project which will gonna moon, you can't know that. And by listening to the signals from everybody else, you are still kind of getting a lot of noise. So where we come in and how we create that credibility in this way is we are using media outlets which are very like traditionally Web 2, but that's kind of like intentionally. Why? Because they feel like they are all dying out. There are very little of them traditionally ones are left. People are now moving into more social media, moving beyond that kind of like coverage. But what you get is the last few that are left, they are becoming the gatekeepers of information. You cannot recreate a 125-year-old like newspaper, because it takes that amount of time. And what they have left is a dwindling audience, but yet a increased credibility, because they are a gatekeeper to what gets through and what doesn't. So anybody who has been a founder have, if you ever have a chance to try, I encourage you guys all to mail, to email, to phone call, to get in touch with a journalist that covers technology, covers Web3, and you will understand how hard it is to get them to engage because they are the gatekeepers. They get 200, 300 emails a day. Why would they pick up yours? Why would they answer yours? And the reason why you want them to is because they giving you a inherent stamp of approval by running your story, by talking about your entrepreneurial journey, talking about your project. Those things matter. So if we have to turn it and turn it around and say what we do and how we help communities is that we want to find a way for someone to give you a stamp of approval. So if we are able to get you, let's say, published on um, the Telegraph, we get you published on CNBC, we've gotten clients on Wall Street Journal. These are ways that will be that point where you are not just building your community with which that you can reach out to, but also to the community of the media outlet and to people who are beyond. They're like, why should we trust you? Like, oh, we've been featured here, featured there. You can see in mainly Web2 businesses or startups in the very tech space, they would put front and center where have they been published on, where have they been featured, and that the reason why is because they want to tell you that we are credible, not just by me, but by someone else. And this is not a paid opportunity. This is a purely editorial. So you are able to convince someone who has been seen as a credible person who gives you a thumbs up that you are worth the time. They are effectively shilling for you. That's what that process does. So to build that community from a PR point of view is that you want to convince people that you can be worthwhile, you are investable in. This is according to someone else. So kind of I usually start off my talks with that. I never really realized that I missed out. So what's the difference between marketing, advertising, and public relations? So in marketing, it is you telling someone else you are very smart. In advertising, you're basically saying, I'm very smart, I'm very smart, I'm very smart, I'm very smart, and repeating it over and over again. Public relations is getting someone else who has heard
Jump
what you
approach.
said, and then they tell someone else that, oh, you should trust Peter, he's very smart. So what we're doing is we're laundering our message through a third party, and then that creates that credibility, and that is how you build a community. Because if I tell you my project is amazing, I am very obviously shilling my shit. But if enough people turn around and looked at him and, oh, that's kind of good. Hey, you should really check this guy out. That helps you go further. That's how that people, that word of mouth kind of goes beyond that. So we are the Kickstarter in a lot of these conversations.
Yeah, I completely agree. Classical advertisement is, I mean, there's a place for it, and it works. Just said it's the Trump approach in a way, just repeating 50 times how amazing you are. People start believing it. But yeah, I think especially in tech, it's often about somebody with credibility already will tell you, okay, this guy is what they do, look it up. It's really cool. I think that has a bigger impact in these communities. Um, we forgot to open the channel for questions.
Oh yeah.
So please do come to Telegram, ask your questions. We are still there. It's not gone. It was just hidden for the last few days between sessions. It's open now. Please do ask. I see they're coming in. Sorry about that, everyone. There you see, we're not AI yet. Uh, one last question. Basically to wrap it up, and then we would open for questions from the community, if that's all right for you.
Yeah, yeah.
And the last question would be basically, so you are a Web3 and AI project, you're very early stage, you don't really have a product yet, but you have an amazing thing that's coming. What's the quick cheat sheet that you would give someone like that to boost credibility?
Mm. So you say no. So early stage don't really have something yet. But
Just
like you
starting
want,
off.
yep. Okay, okay. So maybe like what I would kind of like say here is one, sometimes the person is more important than the product. Um, Being in many, like I've worked at a VC as well. From that point of view, there are businesses that believe, and there are people who do believe that the entrepreneur is more important than the product. So there are people who are investable. There are people who no matter what they do, they are that magnetic personality that will get people to agree. So I would hope that everybody has that kind of in their locker. So one is to build your own legend, is to talk about is to build that story. So how do you do that? If you don't have a product to sell, then talk about what you do know. You can't be in a world, you can't be obviously building a product if you don't know what you're talking about, right? Or at least you have to have the chops to do so. So one of the things that we do a lot is we do so two things that I would say. One is called a profile feature, which means we help our clients and we like advise and get a lot of our personalities to kind of talk about what they can. So let's say Yan, like for ChainsAtlas, I think we would be talking about like where your technology is. But if not for that, we'll be talking about your background. Like you were used to be in Volkswagen, or like how does that journey? How did you go from Frankfurt to Southeast Asia? How do you go from like working on one of the biggest car companies in the world and now building the next generation of like tech in the Web3 world? So that would be a story that I would think I would want to hear of. Like why did you the framing of it would be you gave up on something that is like a sure win kind of like company, and then you went from there that journey. I want to hear about that, and then you can talk about why did you move to Southeast Asia? What are the key in infrastructure that shows you that you will succeed in this world, and what are the kind of like skill sets that you have picked up and experience you have. So build that story of build your own legend in that way, and that will be a very fast way to get credibility without having to talk too much about your product. And so people would know, oh, Jan is this the ChainsAtlas guy. Oh, I saw his story being featured here. I heard about where his background from. So the natural question is, so what are you doing next? So this is where then you can slide into your project. We also can see another way is you do thought leadership. So thought leadership is where you become synonymous with a concept. So my concept, the one that I want to be kind of like known as, is the instant credibility. So kind of explained that earlier. So how you would do that is you go to podcasts like this and you talk as much as you can about what you do know. The other one is that you write well. And this, because of AI, you don't need to really write. You just need to have great points from your experience drawn and have it spelled out for you, and then you just proofread it. So that's how I'm able to create so much content. But what I feel another way you can do so, or what this would mean is find a topic that is near and dear to what you are doing in the Web3 and the AI world. Write about a way that is what we call that is controversial, but it's not against morals and norms. So make a viewpoint of your own. So like mine, credibility, everybody can talk. I added in the word instant because I want something fast. I want something good, but unfortunately, it's not going to be cheap. Yes, so find that message that you want, build a thought leadership of series of content behind it, and you can find people, you can post it on your own sites, you can post it on your own channels, but also that's where we come in, is we will find media outlets that are willing to take people's viewpoints. So these two, building your profile feature, and then the other one, as we said, it was writing thought leadership. And the last thing I'll add on to here is Milton or Daniel on our chat on a semi-regular basis. we do share it in a lot of our chats or with like founders on some media opportunities that we come across. So at any point in time, we have media outlets looking for stories, looking to feature entrepreneurs, and they come across us and they ask us like who can we share with them. Many times we might not have the right client to fit that profile, but maybe your business could be a good fit. So get in touch with us. Hit us up on Telegram, and maybe like you might be that personality we could kind of like share with. I think we just had Fortune, we had like CNBC. I think we also had a few like more Southeast Asian based media outlets that are looking for journalists and journalists looking for entrepreneurs to cover. So let's have a chat and then build that legend. That's how you can be at an early stage, build up your credibility.
Thanks for the answer. So I'm gonna talk about how I'm like pain and suffer. That's why I go into startups and hate winters. That's why I went to Southeast Asia. Easy, easy, done
Exactly.
already. Awesome. So let's switch to the questions from the community. They are flowing in now. If you have another 10, 15 minutes,
Yeah, sure.
if that's all right for you, awesome. I think we always book you for like 45 minutes, but it tends to be an hour or more these days. So I probably have to change that. Okay, let's start. One from Luke, I already basically already asked in parallel. Let's skip that one. There's one from another Luke. Do you think AI generated content, white papers, code, branding can undermine trust instead of building it? And what role does community engagement play in building credibility early on?
Mm,
Okay, I asked this one as well already, basically, but the first one is a good one.
yeah. Well, I don't think that I think okay, maybe I'll put it like this in a more active manner, so passive. I'm a big fan of AI, not only because it makes life easier for content creation, but it also is a great way to do like the research you need. So as mentioned earlier, I actually use quite a lot of variety of AI tools, and what it does is that it helps you kind of like make your points. But AI isn't the end all be all. It's maybe not yet, not that smart yet. It is to the point is that you still want to. I think what you need to do is that you can use AI to create the content and the branding and everything, but you need to have a more you need to be in control. As in, you can put on. Just imagine you're driving. So I'll come back to the Volkswagen. I have one at home. We have like cruise control, but that doesn't mean you don't drive, as in it does help you move forward, but you still have to be in charge. So the same way I would talk about AI is you and anybody who uses it has to be sure, and you need to be sure that it is not giving you an answer that it didn't give like someone else. You have to still find your unique voice in it. So you gotta use the tools that as it may, but remember everybody is doing the same. So how will your voice be different? You need to put in things that you want to be known for, maybe a turn of phrase which you're usually using, or use in a way that sounds like you. So that part, I don't think AI is easily there yet. You can ask it or quote it. So write in this style of Shakespeare, or make this look like that. But it is in it at the end. This AI is still an imitation. It is not the original. You have to be there to quality control and make it yours, be it on design or text or anything that you do. So I think that was I think that was my what I learned from AI. Forgot what's I think was Leola Smalls, one of the marketing agencies here had a talk, and in that I learned a lot around how you need to use AI to get what you want, but don't trust it 100%. You still need to make your own spin and your own unique touch on it.
Yeah, I totally agree. Um, I found that if you give it the right instructions, the outcome can be a lot better. I mean, obviously, with the advent of agents and adapters, you can train it a bit to be basically on your own way of writing, so it becomes more like you, but you still have to be in the loop and be part of it. Um, I second the research part though. I
Mm,
just used, I think, Gemini in a research mode, and I had it do research on certain investor communities in different countries. And the
mm,
information I got, the research it would take me to do the same research, or the time it would take me to do the same
yeah,
research, it's astounding. That would be a week of research, to be frank. Uh,
yeah,
and that was done. You let it do it. You go eat. You come back. It's there. Right? It's really
exactly.
anyway. It's question time, so I don't want to digress too much. So the next one is from Bin Suleiman. Um, and thanks to Luke for the first question, really good one.
Yeah,
What
thanks, Luke.
common branding takes do early stage Web3 founders that instantly take away trust?
Oh, instantly takes away trust. Um, I think that would like a few quick answers come to mind is making claims that making issuing checks that you cannot cash, making claims that are definitely too outlandish. I think that might be a difference in different markets where in, let's say, like the US, you have to make bold claims. You have to state wild projections, like where things are going to be, because that's how it's done. But I feel like I can't speak too much about that, but in the Asian Pacific, Southeast Asian market as well, it you need to find that balance. That's my number one lesson, is you need to find that balance between being boastful but yet kind of realistic. Because in most cases where you say, oh, we can do our tool is able to do reduce your workload by 100%. In other markets, that would be kind of like that's necessary to stand out. But in a more Southeast Asian or more like APAC kind of world, that tends to fall flat, and it becomes one very fast way for you to lose that credibility is by being too enthusiastic about it. And even to some extent, I've actually worked on campaigns where we intentionally dumb down our stats because it just seems too good to be true. Where we were at Drop My Site, we had our Drop My Mobile. We were actually had to turn down how well we said our security is, because nobody would believe that we would able to, at that price point, being able to offer that kind of encryption. I was like, okay, then maybe let's not go too hard at it. So I would say that would be one key takeaway. Right now I can't think of anything else, but I'm sure some of it will come to me, and maybe I will kind of I will use AI to write a there's a good piece. I'm gonna write a piece about early mistakes, and I'm gonna make AI do the research, and then I'll put my spin on it, and then I'll publish it.
Yeah, that'd be amazing. We'll drop it in the community, and then we have a long answer to it. Um, Thanks a lot for that, and thanks a lot for the question, Bin Suleiman. Um, the next one would be, okay, what's your main bridge between Web 2 and Web 3? So I assume, what is your main way of getting Web 2 into Web 3?
And vice versa, I guess. Um,
I,
hmm.
I was stopping short of saying that because mostly it's this way around, but yeah, absolutely.
I think where it is kind of, we touched about this a little bit earlier around um, to get people who are not already in the community in Telegram. It's to kind of, they don't want to hear, it's kind of back to what we said, they don't need to know that it is web 2 web 3, they just need to know that it works. So if the easiest way for us and how we've gotten our web 3 clients kind of like featured in different places is we don't hype up the fact that there is anything Web3. We just, where does it go? What does it do for anybody else? And oh, by the way, happens to be a project that has a blockchain, has a crypto aspect to it, and that's kind of like, the easiest way. Every case will be a little bit different, so can't really say that. So what we had was, off the top of my head, I think an example I had was, we had this was in blockchain, for example, specifically, but for AI. So we have two clients that are actually listed companies on the Nasdaq, and one of them is called Orange Cloud. So kind of similar to what Yan, you said earlier. It has a new product called eMobic AI, where you could give it like, Chat GPT type prompts, and it will build you an app, no coding required. So besides the fact that it's a company that is already of a certain scale, we would kind of point out that we don't want people to feel like, oh, it's AI. No, the AI has nothing to do with it. Our pitch was, you can now build apps just with prompts, and that was how we were able to get it picked up in various like, interviews, articles, as well as getting some live TV and live news to kind of cover that. So that's kind of like what I would say. And then the other one is a AI call center. So instead of having humans doing calls, it's AI. So do we need to point out the fact that it is AI? No, we said that it's a call center that is able to cut costs by, I think was maybe almost like, 65%. And then the next question is why? Then okay, by the way, AI. So I would say, if anything, to bridge that gap is, don't try to bring up things that will confuse. Convince them first, then you come in with something a little bit more controversial or contrarian, that, like, which would be, in this case, puts people on edge, but get them in through the door, then you hit them over the head with it. I would say that's my quick take.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. Expose them to tiny bits of it and then see. Some might go for it, some might just stay on the Web2 side.
Yeah,
That's
get
I've
them
seen
in
a lot.
slowly.
Yeah.
At this point, I also want to talk about, there's this project called Gochujang. Like, the fun part of it is that, so that
Shout out to
is,
Dan.
then we will talk more. But what I really like about the project is that
We'll be on talking about that
okay,
one
okay,
particularly.
you don't know what that is, but what caught my attention is that they are promoting themselves. So gochujang is a chili sauce. So it's a Korean chili sauce, and they actually have the sauce. I'm like, why does a Web3 company have sauce that they're promoting? But it's, to me, is the most genius thing, is that it doesn't matter what we're doing. But so, we're a Web3 company with a chili sauce. Immediately I'm like, I don't need to know what you're doing. Let me try some of that sauce first. And then it becomes a foot in the door for you to open the door to doing something. And that is the kind of marketing that will grab someone else who doesn't understand what you're doing, that doesn't care about, like,
Yeah,
your tech as
absolutely.
of yet. Find that
I
way
mean,
to get that foot
with
in the door.
spicy food, you always get me. You always get me with spicy
Yeah,
food. So
exactly,
I
right? I was like, I don't know what it is, but I'm like, hey man, let me know what you can make with that, and then I'll sit down and have a chat.
yeah,
And so Dan has a lot of songs. He's got, like, merch. It's the same way that you give out free merchandise at a tech show, but everybody gives the same thing. But this guy gives out hot sauce, and you want to talk to the
yeah,
guy
pretty cool.
who has a chili in his pocket. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if you go to Web3 conference, like I remember in Consensus in Hong Kong,
Mm.
they had a booth in one of the side events. And it was just all over, all kinds of flavors of that hot sauce. That was pretty much the whole booth, and
Exactly.
people
And
responded.
you remember that. So that's how, like, I think we kind of buried the lead here, but yeah, that's how you get people to
In
be
full disclosure,
interested
I
in.
knew the guys before. I didn't go there because of that, but yeah, it worked. It worked. Cool. Let's do two more if that's all right.
Yeah,
And
sure.
then I think we're good. Um, let's do this one. Is being open and transparent really that important for startups to build trust, or is it overrated?
Hmm. There's a change of pace from the other question you're asking, but that's interesting because I think giving it like the 15-20 seconds of thought I have, I do think being transparent and open is important for credibility, especially like in this kind of like environment where there's so much of mistrust in a lot of the work that you have in the projects in this space. So if you can like like not just say it, but you can really back it up with being that honest. I know we all fudge our numbers and stats a little bit for how it looks, but if you can kind of like step up and actually say so, that would be like brings back to what I've said around the profile feature and the thought leadership is that you can call out like hypocrisy. Oh, my competitors say that like they are this and this, but in fact they are not. I'm the only one. I'm the one who step up to it. So it's a gambit. It's a double-edged sword. You can kind of like go at it hard, and how everybody else like doesn't kind of like step up to the plate, doesn't follow the standards that you are setting, but also then it will kind of come it will it, if you kind of get attached and married to that concept, you are kind of you have to defend yourself at all times. So that could be, so I would say yes, especially if in an industry where it's shrouded by secrecy or mystery. It's great to have someone who would want to step up to be the beacon of truth and light. But do note that all these kind of things comes with a cost. It comes with a kind of like you will pay for it somehow. So whether can you take the whether you can take the pain, and if you can, more power to you. Keep that up, and that becomes what you're known as. I think you want to be. I think that's kind of like last bit I'll say is that that's if that's the beacon, that's where you want to like align yourself with, then find the one that you're willing to do so, and then go at it full force because nobody else can take your position in that.
Amazing answer. Thanks a lot, and thanks, Ezzy, for the question. One last one. That's a bit of a tough one. How should startups, thanks to Bruno, how should startups use PR to recover from early mistakes or failed launch? I don't think there's a one
Oh,
fits all, but maybe you have some ideas.
yeah, sure. Well, when you have done work as long as we have, we've not always succeeded, even in. So what we kind of promised a lot of our
Don't let me
clients
get
is that
started, man. Don't let me get started. So many,
exactly right,
so
so
many
many, right?
mistakes made.
So many
It's yeah,
mistakes.
yeah.
So like I don't know one thing I know for like that I can do correct, but I know 1,000 things I know that's done that I won't do again. So what we I would say is that that's the one, the beauty of being in technology is that you can fail and come back again. Uh, Geez, I just recently read this and I really laughed out loud. Was that the is it Elizabeth Holmes? Her boyfriend is going to launch a blood testing startup. I'm like, come on, she just kind of failed on her ass and is fraud for all that she did. But
Seriously?
seriously,
Is
I
it a
just
real
read
thing?
it, and
What
this is a
the
real thing.
heck?
Yeah, so go look it up. But what that points out to me is that you are always able to come back. You don't, just because you failed once before and it's a spectacular failure. Oh, you can come back from that, no doubt. So one story I always kind of refer to is we were at a point representing a company that does a AI like powered air conditioned monitors, if that's the right way to say it. So basically, for those in Southeast Asia, you would know air conditioning is a must-have for every home because it's so hot and humid. So they produce this product that allows you to that controls your air condition for you, so that you can find the optimum level of cold and like comfort. So it's not too cold and not too dry and all that. So we worked on their first campaign, which was a crowdfunding Kickstarter. and it bombed like bad. It didn't even cover costs, and it was like, it was up to the point where there were kind of discussion whether or not they should continue where they're gonna go. But the founder in the business, Julian of MB Labs, yeah, so he actually said, no, we're gonna do this again, but this time we're gonna do it right. We got our messaging better. We're gonna prepare more. So we were part of that campaign where we kind of like did the content. We helped with like priming the media. We worked with influencers in various markets that was around Asia Pacific. And then when we launched a second time, we raised, I think, was almost $200,000, if I'm not wrong. My memory might be a bit fuzzy a couple of years back there, but we did kind of like hit the target like many times over, and we used that as a story to say we learned, like we learned from what we did wrong the first time, and then we learned know how to do it a second time, and we actually created a story that actually talked about it, that was about how you can learn from your mistakes, how you can kind of like turn it around. So no, failure right now doesn't mean failure forever. One of my quotes that my I learned growing up is, I'm not like failing. I'm just temporarily not successful.
I love that. I love that. So let's be temporarily or permanently successful. Let's do that.
Permanently
But
successful, yes, exactly.
uh, but it's yeah, it's part of the journey. I mean, we had it earlier. You learn so much more from your mistakes than you learn from
Mhm.
your successes. So it's something to embrace in the end. Maybe the malice of the blood sample thing, that's a different story. Let's not go there. But mistakes are okay. Being plain out evil about it is not. But
Yeah.
yeah, uh, it's absolutely true. I completely agree. So we are way over time now, almost half an hour. Thanks so much for sticking around and answering all the questions.
No worries.
Um,
And yeah, no, thank you
it was
for having me on. It was fun to
always
have a chat
come
and
back.
share. Yeah, sure, for sure.
I really enjoyed it, and from what I can see, the audience did too. So you're always welcome to come back. Maybe with after you created that little piece about
Oh yes,
yeah
that's right. I got the idea. I was also
Web2 to
write
Web3
my
was
write
it?
my story. Yeah, what to,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly.
Um, cool. Really great time with you. For all of you, in 2 weeks, we come back. Sometime if you could quickly let me know who'll be on in 2 weeks. I know we are booked out for the next 2, 3 months.
We have the next one coming on 5th June with with the next guest. So stay tuned for the official announcement from our channel.
Okay. So who's on the next one? Sorry, I didn't catch it. Okay. Um, Big shout out to Sumtai. She's organizing these podcasts in the background. She's a little shy still, but she's coming out more and more. So great shout out. Thanks for tuning in. And thanks to all in the audience for being here. Really great time for the amazing questions. As always, this will be on YouTube in a couple of days. And feel free to post on our channels. You know them. If you have any further questions or requests or suggestions. And see you back in 2 weeks. Next week, we'll have another episode of Around Blocks, Beyond the Blocks, sorry. Our X Space AMA. Um, I hope X is a little bit less difficult this time. So thanks a lot for being here and see you next week. And then again in 2 weeks for linking the blocks. Have a wonderful time. Thanks again to you, Peter, and wonderful evening in Sydney. Bye bye.